welcome to CData Foundation. My name is Tammy Coles and I'm Head of Sales for CData Virtuality. I'm very, very honored to welcome Asad from Unanet today. And maybe you can say a couple of words about yourself, Asad?
Sure. Thanks, Tammy. My name is Asad Joain. I am currently the Chief Product Officer here at Unanet, which is a SaaS company providing vertical specialized software to certain segments of the market. I've been here about 5 years, but been in product leadership roles for about 2 decades now.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. And one of the things we wanted to speak about today is that you've been using CData Virtuality for around 3.5 years now. And I just wanted to understand a little bit about the journey you had. You know, what were your main challenges you faced at the beginning? What drove the need for change?
Sure. So what brought us to CData was and data virtuality in particular, was we were a system of record for a few thousand customers that were on our platform. And each of these customers will have anywhere between 50 to 200 employees. And so they wanted to get reporting on their terms out of our system. And what that meant was no matter how much analytics we put into our baked in solution within the system of record, they wanted a way to use their tools, Power BI or Tableau or the likes, to access their data and visualize it. And when we looked at solutions like that, we looked at a few different things, giving them raw data warehouses or other homegrown solutions or even some other vendors. And what we were looking for is something to get really quickly time to market, as in to get and put a solution out there that our customers can use, and something that would have legs for us to grow, to scale from going for a few hundred to a few thousand customers starting to use this. And as we evaluated different vendors, and because we were very firmly grounded in cloud architecture, we landed on data virtuality because of time to market. And since then, of course, I'm scaling from a couple hundred to a couple thousand customers. We have seen some growing pains, but we've fixed those growing pains with your help as we learned how our customers would use this so-called data or would abuse in some ways the amount of data that they have access to. So that started the journey of time to market. How can you get the solution to market as soon as possible? And what keeps us here is as we are evolving and understanding our customer needs, data virtuality is coming along for the ride and helping us solve those problems.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting how you started the journey and that you feel that the time to market was a bit faster with a product. And now that you have so many kind of clients and you've been able to grow so fast, that's really, really amazing. So as you undertook this transformation, can you tell me some of the key metrics, or what kind of key metrics were there that indicated to you or you used to gauge or to get the idea of the success you had? Obviously, one of them was that you grew your customer base, but are there any other metrics you had there?
So the first step is, are they adopting it? In terms of metrics in general with product, there's two categories. One, are they starting to consume it? And two, are they actually getting what they want out of it? And initially, consumption is more important than whether they are satisfied or not, because it gets them to understand what visualization of data means or what they're trying to get out of the system to begin with. And so the first step was just how many customers are we onboarding and how much data is going back and forth between the systems. So from our data virtuality instance versus our normal transactional database, right? What percentage is coming out of data virtuality versus just our transactional DB. So that was the first thing that we were looking at from a metrics perspective. How often are people pulling data and how many unique instances of those pulls exist? That was an easy indicator or metric to capture because it wasn't necessarily as qualitative. The next one was actually a little bit more nuanced because now we have to figure out if our users are actually getting what they want. And so we started out with a qualitative approach where we had customer success actually reach out to them and say, okay, are you kind of getting what you want, and what are you trying to actually accomplish? Um, we started out with a very hands-on approach. We've then since then moved to figuring out how many repetitive pulls are happening. Because if you're doing the same thing again and again consistently across a certain time duration, it means it's working for you to pull that data because you're consuming that data to some degree. And so then we started going after not just raw pulls and not just having customer success come on a call with one of our customers or end users, but to actually see how consistently are people doing the same action uh, in order to make sure they're getting the right amount, the data, because they're pulling it consistently. So those were the basic metrics that we have used in the past. What we're doing today now is to figure out um, usage patterns. So an example being, if our large customers are pulling X, but our small customers are pulling just the same amount of data, then we know there's a problem because small customers should be pulling less data because then in many ways they don't know what they're doing and they're just pulling everything. And so an educational element is going on there. So what we're looking at now is a metric tied to the size of the customer and the amount of data they pull.
Yeah, that's a very smart way to kind of go about that. And do you think that there were like any kind of specific milestones which stood out along the way? So obviously you come along a really quite long way where you said that first thing you wanted to see about the usage and how they're kind of going ahead with that, what the quality of that is. But in between that time, was there something which stood out?
Its customer acquisition was the biggest one. So how many customers? So what we did was we allowed customers to have a trial license for 90 days. Because when you tell people, hey, this is the stuff you're asking for, would you like it? The early adopters are the ones asking for it. So it's easy. You don't have to give them a trial license. They just want it. You sell it to them successfully, and then you work out some of the kinks. When you're dealing with this middle ground where customers don't know they need this, and you can't tell them they need this and they have to pay for it. So we started this trial license where we work with one expert in-house to help them visualize their data needs via whatever internal tool they use, Power BI or Tableau. And we saw conversions getting higher. So in our case, for us, the measure was if you put something in front of a customer and you let them use it for free, within 90 days, are they hooked enough to go in to basically pay for it? That was the in between that we started. We've actually removed that from now, where we've created enough of referenceable customers that one customer talks to the other and they automatically acquired without any trial period.
Yeah, that's really cool and interesting to hear how you kind of went first with the free kind of 90 days, and now once they used it, they see the benefit. So beyond this technical aspect, how did transformation impact your team, your organizational culture inside? Were there any, shifts in mindset or collaboration that played the key role in the driving of the success?
Yeah, so the first, if you look at product transformations, this is the shiny, opportunistic section in our early phase, where anything you do will make customers happy, and you feel like you're solving all their problems with just one switch of a button by just introducing the product. So we did that, and we were pretty excited in the first few months. But then we started to realize that data virtuality is a tool that's part of our product package. It's not everything. And it's our responsibility to understand how there is a gap in there, whether it's pre-generating certain reports to help customers start out in their journey, versus just giving them access to the entire data set and then they're partially confused on what to do, versus or access control, how much access which customer has or which role within our system of record has, and how to map our roles to the data virtuality roles to make sure that not all customers, like, even though it's not about one customer having access to another customer's data, that's not what we're talking about. Is within the same customer base, different users should not have access to different sensitive data elsewhere. And so we've
Yeah.
gone on this journey from introducing a shiny new object, people loving it, and then we're finding out different things with it and realizing that it's important to realize that any tool you pick, whether it's data virtuality or something else, it is not going to be a one-to-one map to your solution, that you actually have to build on top of that. And it's okay to do that in stages. You don't have to figure out all of those things all at once. And so for us, the big shift was data virtuality is part of the formula, not the entire formula, and that it's our responsibility to also add on components, whether it's permission management, whether it's data reports that we should put into the system to help our customers get that. And today, as it stands, we've gone one step further to say, we are segmenting our customer profiles and saying, for the larger customers, this is how they use it. For the mid-market customers, this is how they use it. And so each of them have different needs. And so this journey continues on, and our mindset continues on from just being shiny new object to actually something robust that can generate a lot of revenue for us.
Yeah. One of the things you actually mentioned just now as well is the kind of onboarding of all of this point about that within the customers, you had to make sure that different people had access to different things. So data governance seems to be critical in the ERP systems. So how did you ensure that high standard of data quality and compliance throughout this journey? How did you manage to kind of, did you have a program? Did you share the information? How other clients did it? Did you have something? How did you do that?
Sure. So we are first fortunate because we are a single tenant database for each customer. So the front ends are multi-tenant, but the back end or the data source is single tenant. So off the bat, one customer will never be able to have access to another customer's data. And the data virtuality instances that we've set up are specific to that same thing, where it's specific. The databases are completely separate, encrypted a different way, and the like. So the biggest thing around governance for us is within the organization, how do you make sure certain data is not exposed to certain customers, certain end users? And so what we actually started to do is, originally we started by just mapping our user roles to a data virtuality user role. But what we realized is that's you can't make the assumption is that a user role and permission on a front end system with a user experience and a user interface should be sufficient when you're mapping to pulling large copious amounts of data. And so when we started doing that, we started realizing that we need to come up with a set of completely different user roles tied to reporting. That was the big, the bulb going off moment. And we spent a lot of time there. Yeah, we created a whole different collection of users that specifically tied to reporting. And those users don't directly necessarily map to our users on our system, because the users on our system, whether they're project managers or admins or owners of the business, they have different needs when they're interacting with the ERP versus with reporting. Secondly, there's a lot of bots that our customers are building themselves, automated systems that are pulling data. And so we created a whole new set of users. And those users, we've actually worked directly with the customers to say what kind of governance is needed for each one of those. So an example being pay data. We want to avoid having pay data across any user if possible. And we want to make it so that you can maybe obfuscate it and you roll it up into something larger that's hard to find out what a particular individual is getting paid, but you're trying to figure out the cost of a particular project. So we've done a few things around that, not just in terms of user roles, but also in terms of maybe refactoring some of the data in the database to create new tables, and only those tables that are exposed are meta views that doesn't allow a direct mapping of very sensitive HR related data. So it's a combination, governance is a combination of introducing new users or user permissions on your system. That's one thing. And the second thing is also realize that you can provide the data. You may not need to provide in that granular fashion that can then potentially cause more issues for you if somebody gets access to that data. So it's a combination of the two, modifying the data as well as introducing different types of users with specific permissions.
Yeah. That's quite a journey, and I can see kind of the difficulties or the issues you challenged and what you had to go through to be able to finally find a way. And especially, you know, as an ERP, the users don't necessarily automatically map, and different projects need different kind of governance. And that's really interesting. And I would like to hear to continue on other projects going forward and how that goes. And one of the things we said as well a little bit earlier is obviously the growth, the amount of people who came when you started. So now I just want to talk a little bit more about that. How would you say, or how did Unanet's data volume grow? How are you ensuring that your solutions are remaining scalable and cost effective without compromising some of the performance and accessibility? And I know there's been a times where things have been a bit challenging, but we worked through it. So how are we going forward with that?
Sure. So when we started out, we gave the keys to our customers, so to speak. You could do whatever you want. And some of them, I mentioned a bit earlier, where the size of the customer directly ties to the amount of data they pull. Reason why we started measuring that is because we started realizing some customers didn't know what they were doing. So what do you do when you don't know what you're doing? You do everything you can. Yeah, and so they pulled a bunch of data all the time, and we started seeing some pretty big problems. And we actually originally thought it was a tool problem, as in data virtuality, but it was not. It was when you give access, it's like data virtuality to some degree is a Ferrari. If you give it in the hands of a layman, they can potentially cause issues for themselves and the people around them. And that's where part of the governance came in, but it's also part of making sure that we had alerts in our systems when big amounts of data are being pulled, like multiple joins or the likes, we get alerted, and then we have a communication with the customer. So that was the early days. So it's almost like the crawl, walk, run. The crawl part was let's monitor and have automated monitoring to see when copious amounts of data are being pulled. How do you reach out to that customer? We've now transitioned much further along from the crawl to the walk to the run, where we are now have like customer governance, where one customer can't pull so much amounts of data down that's called creating a cost-effective or costly problem for us, as well as compromising other customers' performance during daytime operating hours. So it started out with reactive to now it's happening automatically. That's the first thing we're doing, and it's tied to governance and then also tied to the data volumes. The second thing we're doing is we're taking away some of the full power of our customers and scaling it back a little bit and saying, you don't really need access to all your data. What you really need access to is this materialized views or things that are pre-compiled that you would want access to. So it's a journey. It started out with make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, get reactive. And then as data virtuality started introducing new features as well, we took advantage of them, like customer governance in terms of noisy neighbors. And then we started introducing those things as well. And today it's a combination of those things as well as repositioning the product offering to being it's everything you wish for to 95% of what you wish for, so that we can make sure it's a cost-effective solution for us and our customers.
Yeah, thank you, Asad. So now that you've gone through this entire process and you've learned a lot in the last 3.5 years, is there like and if any other data leaders embark on a similar journey, maybe even bigger companies or different companies, what kind of recommendation would you do or give them to ensure a smooth and successful transition or uptake?
Sure. I think the first one is figure out where you want to be 3 years from now with your customers. And then don't worry about anything in between and just take the first step directionally in that direction. The reason why I tell you that is because how you get there is going to drastically change, because you think you know your customers and you don't. You think you know your data and you don't. But keep it loose, but know where you're trying to go, where you're trying to take them. Because you want to always not kind of lose your way, and you want to know that you want to kind of keep yourself loose based on what you learn. The second thing is the crawl, walk, run. I would really go sub-segment your customer base, sub-segment your usage, and start to tackle one or two of them, not all of them. So be mindful and don't suddenly stand up customers that are across your entire customer spectrum, because what you're doing there is you're creating a lots of problems for yourself, and you don't have the ability to solve all the problems all at once, and it's chaos. So if I could probably do it again, I would say I would sub-segment based on customers. And I will be honest with you, sales are sales. So if they get a chance to sell it to a customer, they will sell regardless of what you tell them. But if it's possible to do that. The third one would be, no matter what tool you pick, data virtuality or other tools, it's not going to solve all your problems. You cannot make the assumption that you just plug it in and everything's going to work. You have to do work on your own as well. You have to understand that the tool is part of the overall solution, the formula, and you may have to do things to make this successful. I've mentioned a few things like starter reports, things of that sort, permissions and governance. So keep that in mind. No matter what tool you pick is not a slam dunk. There is work to be done on your side. Know that going in and plan for that. That will probably save you a few months, if not longer.
Yeah, so much. That's amazing. So my last question really is, what does the future look like, especially with the advancement of AI? Where do you think you're heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think so. There's two parts to AI. One is it predicts what you need, and then two is for what you think you need, it gives you an intelligent answer. And that the second one is actually the first step in this journey. If the customer doesn't know what question to ask about their data, no amount of intelligence will help them. And so, for our perspective, we're trying to educate and empower our customer base to be able to ask the right questions. Once they do that, we're incorporating certain tools to allow us to give them more effective solutions once mining the data. So an example being is if the customer goes, how can I make this particular project more profitable? And if the simplest answer on the AI solution is have less cost, that's not going to be very intelligent. But if the customer goes and puts more constraints in there, then answering that question is something much more effective that any tool, whether it's AI or some other data mining tool, will help. So that's where we are spending most of our time in the next 1 to 2 years. The second thing we're trying to do is on the prediction side. So regardless of whether the customer is asking a particular question, we're saying, here are the top 3 metrics tied to anything a customer does: profitability, on time. And so we are using those as metrics to predict for each project based on looking at the data visualization or background, whether or not the customer is looking for it. So hopefully that answers your question there.
Yeah, that answers my question perfect. Thank you so much, Asad. This really kind of completes our fireside chat. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.